Welcome to Theory Paranormal Episode 5. This episode is going to be on energy, chakras, and orbs. My name is Pax. I am your host, and I am sitting here with my fellow teammate, Dalton.
Evening, Pax.
Evening, Mr. Dalton.
Feels pretty good to be home on a regular mic, I got to tell you.
Yes, it does. Doesn't sound like I'm talking to you halfway across the country.
Don't hear my nose whistling either.
I didn't know you were in a band.
I was.
A one-person band.
That's what happens when you get your nose broke too many times.
That'll be a story we will probably never cover.
Probably not.
So,
Me and a bull.
there you go. As far as it goes, as I just stated, this episode's about energy, chakras, and orbs, all three different things, but all closely related because they all surround the magical thing of energy. So, the first one that we're going to touch base on, just to kind of segue and jump on into the topic, is we're just going to talk about energy in general. So, everybody has their own idea of what energy is. They either learned it in school, they maybe learned it from a book, they learned it from a friend, they learned it from a TV show, a documentary, whatever have you there. So I want you to tell me, in your own opinion there, Dalton, what your opinion is of energy. What do you believe it is you can either go the scientific sense or you can go the paranormal sense, or you can do both.
Well, first of all, one's going to lead into the other anyway. So we'll talk about dark energy probably here in a little bit, but dark energy comprises of probably about 70% of the universe. So, like I said, you could talk about standard energy, scientific terms of energy, and paranormal energy, but it's all going to leak into the same thing. That's what I gather from that. I'm not too big on that topic in general, but I'm going to shoot in the wind here and see what we can do. So, to me, you have 10 types of energy, and you also have 4 elements of energy. If you didn't know that, did you know that?
Yes, I did. Go ahead.
So you was like, okay, well, I wasn't expecting that question. So your types of energy that we talked about, we hit on another podcast, would be kinetic energy kind of deal. So you got a mechanical energy, a thermal energy, you got nuclear energy, which sounds like something out of a power plant, but your body actually produces a radiant energy. You got chemical energy. You have electromagnetic energy, sonic energy, gravitational energy. Of course, the kinetic energy is what I just said. You have, very weird when somebody says you have potential energy, but you have ionization energy. So your body, I presume, is putting all these energies out because energy is the essence of life. And as you well know, the lack of energy can make you unmotivated, depressed, impatient, because you just don't have the energy to want to do anything. So the elements, that's where you get into the elements of energy, which is going to be your physical energy, which is how healthy you are, your emotional energy, how happy you are, your mental energy, and how well you can focus on something. So, to me, the science, it kind of leads from a normal aspect into the scientific. And of course, the scientific carries into the paranormal, which is like if you got an entity or a spirit that decides he wants to tap on the table, well, what is he doing at that point? He's producing energy, right? because they're not a physical form, right? So that's how that leads into the paranormal, is they actually have to produce an energy to move something, to make a noise, or like when we talk about disembodied voices, it's a buildup of energy in the spirit that allows them to speak out loud where we can hear them with the naked ear.
Okay.
So a person, their energy is a combination of their past, their mindset, their dominant thoughts, and their perception of the world. So you can almost say like, it could be subconscious. It's pretty easily felt, and other times it manifests pretty quickly. So you get back to the paranormal side of the energy. We talk about now imprinting. A lot of times in the paranormal world, some people, I will say that we talk about imprinting. I separate imprinting from residual haunting, where a lot of investigators will say that imprinting is a residual haunt. But I like to separate.
Do you?
Yeah, because
why is that?
Because the simple fact is a residual haunt is a replay in time. So you basically, like we said, you got the guy sitting on the living room couch and his grandmother walks through the kitchen at 2:00 in the morning. And she does it every Thursday night at the same time. Okay? That's just a residual haunt. That's a replay in time. Now, imprinting, to me, the reason I separate it is because you're going to leave that imprint. You're going to leave that footprint, if you want to say, of energy in a spot. So if you get angry, if you're sad, if you're happy, or either way, one of the 4 elements of your energy is going to be imprinted in the spot that you're sitting or standing at. Now, what happens to that is that other people can, we've talked about this in the prior podcast, where everybody has a sense. Some know it, some don't know it, some don't know why they feel a certain way. Well, those senses are picking up those energies. So again, I can use, let's say the person that goes and tries to buy a house, right? So they walk into one house and they're like, oh, I don't, this don't feel good or whatever. It's not about the size of the kitchen or the nice deck out back, It's the feeling you get when you walk into a place. And so eventually they might find a place that they just walk in there and they just feel all relaxed and they're like, this feels like home. Because there's a good vibe, a good energy in that atmosphere that's there. And they can sense that. So the kitchen might be a little bit smaller and that back porch might be a half the size of the one on the last house. But guess what? They walked in there and they're like, this feels like home. That's what matters. So the energy that is around you, people can walk in. So, for instance, let me throw an example out there to you real quick. You're shopping in the mall with your wife, and she's looking at the same pair. There's like 50 pairs of shoes on the wall. She's been staring at this wall for a while. And you walk over there, and you're like, honey, I'm going to go over here and basically look at aisle 4 or something. And she bites your head off. Well, you just go do what you're going to do and just leave me alone. Well, you're thinking to yourself, what just happened there? Why are you, you're thinking in your mind. You ain't said nothing to her. You just kind of look at her funny and you walk away. Well, then she comes and finds you and you guys leave the store and you're walking through the mall or outside, wherever you're going. And like 10 minutes later, she's all lovey-dovey. Hey, honey, blah, blah, blah. And you're looking at her like, F you, woman. You just chewed my head off for nothing, nothing at all. And people do that all the time. People do that all the time, right? And so it's like you hear about it. Like Somebody will say, man, don't talk to her right now. She's in a bad way. But no, she wasn't. What happened was she stood in somebody's negative imprint. So that you might have had the same person standing there and they might have been on their cell phone arguing with somebody or doing something, right? And so this negative cloud was building up their energy. They're putting out this cloud of energy. And when they walk away from there, guess what happens? That cloud stays there. Okay? So now what you get is you get another person that wants to come look at those shoes. Some are hypersensitive, some are not as sensitive, they all got sensitivity, but it just depends on how much of a sensitive person they are. So they go and they step inside that black cloud of energy. And guess what happens?
They change.
Exactly. Their mentality, they get an attitude. Why? Because they're picking up that negative energy.
Now you say mentality. Do they change also to the point to where you see a demeanor change in their face by any chance? Or is it just like their voice or maybe a look in the eye?
I would say a little bit of everything. Attitude, body motion, and I would say the way they're going to look at you because they're mad. I mean, nobody looks at you mad like they're happy. I mean, I did know a guy that, he was a bouncer in a nightclub, and he'd be throwing you out the club and smiling the whole time. But he was mad.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Yes.
Just saying.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But that's 1 in a million. So normal people, when they're mad or they're upset or whatever, they're going to look at you angry. So you're going to get the facial, the eye contact, the attitude, and the body motion, the demeanor of the body is all going to reflect this negative energy. Now, it could go the other way. It could go the way of positive energy. And let's say your wife was in kind of a bad mood, maybe just tired, whatever. And she goes and steps in that happy energy, and all of a sudden she's happier than a tornado in a trailer park. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? She's just happy. And you can't figure out why she's happy, but now you're happy, right? So now y'all both are pushing out a happy energy. And when you leave that spot, guess what happens? You leave that happy energy there for the next person to pick up on. So that's why I separate imprinting, what I call imprinting. Again, these are all our opinions, like always. But that's why I separate the imprinting from residual. Like I said, most investigators will tie those two together, saying imprinting is a residual haunt. I disagree with that. Now, I will agree to the point that imprinting and a residual haunt, okay, that's an energy force that was imprinted and is replaying at the same time all the time. Now, I can understand what they're trying to say. But to break it down into like a layman's term, I'm going to classify each one to be as such. Imprinting is leaving energy. Residual haunt is a replay in time. So another good example of imprinting, and this is where I learned this from. Do you remember a certain group of fellas that we kind of paid attention to for a little while? They were out for a little while, and then they just disappeared. I don't know where they went to, but anyway, they used to come out, and they used to do sort of the scientific methods like we do.
Okay.
That's, kind of what motivated me to get into the scientific part of it, the theory part. Anyway, they did a test, and they had a machine that could read your aura.
Okay.
Now, you know what aura is, right?
An aura?
Yes.
Depends on what you read, but an aura would be the etherical energy that's surrounding a person's body that can be projected depending on what you believe in by various reasons.
Right. And you can also, your aura comes in colors. So depending on what color of aura you have around you, explains what your
What you're feeling?
yes, what your energy is and what your mentality is going to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so like you go to a green aura, okay? The green aura has a more spiritual connection with the heart than the red aura. Okay, so you got like the red, the greens, the blues. You got all kinds of stuff going on there.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is you have chakras that are power points that are somewhat evenly spaced over different parts of your body physically, but they actually transcend to a spiritual level to where they're more energy based, hypothetically. Does that sound right?
Yeah, you're going into the chakra, but this is, I believe, so I can understand that, but I think it's more energy
Okay.
because the green, let's say a green, you look at somebody's aura and it's green.
Right.
Okay, so that means that they got a lot of love and compassion and selflessness. So if you know somebody that you might look at and go, man, you just have a big heart. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're selfless and they got all kinds of love and compassion, I guess, for others as well. Sometimes more others than themselves. So they are pretty much, in my opinion, they'll probably be like the kindest people you'll ever meet with the green aura. Okay, so if you go into the red aura, now you're going to jump back to a chakra, right? Because that's your ground chakra. That is coming out of where? Your feet?
Could be.
You're grounded?
Sometimes referred to as your root chakra.
Root chakra, exactly. But it's in your feet, right? It's down.
Correct.
Right, hence the grounding. So the physical health and the sense of life in general is basically connected to our primal urges, the root chakra, right?
Right.
Okay. So red auras are known to be achievers and headstrong when it comes to their goals. You agree to that?
It depends on the day, but yeah, mostly.
Depends on the day. Okay, so anyway, to get back to the scientific, now I'm going scientific for you. So anyway, this group of guys that we watched and we kind of knew and whatnot, they had a machine that could read your aura, give off your aura, but it also read your energy too, if that makes sense. So
Yep, completely does.
Okay, so what they did was they were in a bar in the Northeast. I'm not going to name the state or the bar, but they were in a bar in the Northeast. You want to know a little bit of the story about the bar and why they're there?
Of course.
Okay.
So does it start off with 3 people walked into a bar?
There's all kind of jokes like that, brother. Don't get me started on it. Okay, so what happened in this bar was there was a table in a certain corner of the bar. When you walk in, you kind of go to the left, and over there was like a high top table. You know what a high top table is?
Yes.
Okay. So the story goes that this girl met her boyfriend up there, and they were sitting there for about 30, 40 minutes, right? And the boyfriend grabbed some kind of weapon and just started beating the crap out of her with it for no reason. There was no argument that anybody's seen or anything, okay? So he basically murdered his girlfriend right there in the bar.
No bueno. No good.
No bueno.
No
Nope.
bueno.
Okay, so that's done and over with, and about a month later, it's funny how this is going to turn. a month later, a guy and a girl was sitting there, and come to find out, the girl found out that the dude was cheating. So guess what she did?
I'm going to let you tell me.
She-
How's that sound?
She pulls out some kind of weapon or whatnot and basically murdered the boy, the dude. So now you got the guy murdering the chick in the first one, and the girl murders the dude in the second one. So now what they did was, this was a test of that these people were fine when they walked in the bar, but they sat in that area where when the first murders happened. Now they're trying to figure out what happened before the first murder to decide what kind of energy was left in that area to be able to provoke or set the people off sitting there. Now the one person that got murdered might have not been feeling much of nothing, but the one that actually picked up something and beat the crap out of him with it,
Right.
that might have been a very sensitive person, I would say, because they obviously took 100% of that negative energy, which we'll get into negative and positive energies. The only reason we call it a negative energy is because of the word negative, actually. I didn't know if you knew that or not. Actually, there's more positive energy than there is so-called negative energy, but negative energy ain't bad, actually, to be honest with you.
So that whole analogy of two negatives make a positive, is that still correct?
That I couldn't tell you. I'm just saying, from what I've learned over the years, that a lot of people, like when they say negative energy, it's because of the word negative that makes people think that it's bad. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Okay, so it's like, what do you want to call that? Psychology? Basically psychology?
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, let's go back to the thing. So we're just going to continue to call it negative energy because that's what people process it as. Bad energy. Let's just say bad energy. So there was bad energy there. So what they did was they brought in random people. No paranormal experience, no nothing. Just random people. Didn't tell them the story of anything. Said, hey, just go sit in that chair right over there and we're going to film you while you sit there and have a drink or whatever you're doing at that, whatever they got them doing sitting there at the table, okay?
Okay.
So they sit there and they have them sit there for like, now we're going to go into a little bit of a time frame. So they have some sit there for 10 minutes, some sit for 20 minutes, some sit for 30, 40 minutes. You understand what I'm saying, where I'm going with this? So they measure up how fast in 10 minutes does their aura change. And they had it on a screen. So what happens, this machine that they had, I couldn't tell you what the name of it was, but you can see the aura around the person. So let's say the aura was green.
Okay.
And they sat there for 10 minutes and it started to turn black.
Really?
Sure. Yep. So they let that person go. Now I might be talking like maybe 3% of the green aura started to turn black. And that's 10 minutes of sitting there. So they brought in another person and told them to go sit, do the same thing, basically. And they sat there for 15, 20 minutes. Now their aura started to turn a little bit black, but it kind of started to turn, I forget which color is the anxious, like where people get anxious sitting around there, but it started to turn that color.
Okay.
I'll think of it here in a few minutes. But anyway, it started to go more towards the black. Now, black aura, again, we're going to use the word negative energy. All right. That's what because that's what people know, negative energy. So I'm going to say bad energy So black aura pertains to bad energy. It's an indicator of unresolved issues in the past, trauma, current problems, and event health concerns. Now, do you want me to repeat that for you?
Yes. Say it again.
It's an indicator of unresolved issues. Unresolved in the past, trauma, current problems, and even health concerns. Once again, unresolved issues, trauma, current problems, and health concerns. What part of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things do you think happened to those people when they got murdered?
Probably all of them.
Okay.
At one point in time or another.
Okay, so this backs up the energy that was left there, right?
Yes.
You would agree to that?
Yes, without a doubt. That's a imprinting.
Exactly. So you had, all right, let's go here. You had trauma with them getting hit with something.
Mm-hmm.
You had health concerns. They're dead. Now, as a spirit of energy, right?
Yes.
You can go to the unresolved issue and current problems, which I'm going to eliminate current problems. Let's just go with unresolved issue. So these people, let's say their spirit form, their ghost, is left there, and the black aura meaning is unresolved issue. Now, let me just get back to the people sitting in the chair. All three of them, no matter how long they stood there, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, okay? All their auras started to turn black. Out of all the colors they could have been turning. The energy
makes you think.
It does. So it makes you think, like, okay, energy. People think of energy. What are your term of the forms of energy? Gas, whatever. What'd you say it was?
Well, you got the generic ones, which are solid, gas, or liquid, which are just what we identify. I mean, the scientific community, what different things are, around Earth. So that's just the simple ways.
That's a scientific. That'd be the scientific.
Yep.
So you got water, which would be hydrogen, gas, and then what else? Solid?
Yeah, you got solids.
Okay. Those energies are what you would consider a fuel that you use for fuel?
It's a fair statement.
Okay. To me, that'd be an easy statement. But now you flip it to the paranormal side, and you're talking about your 10 types of energies that your body gives off. Now these people passed away. Do you not think that their spirit form has an unresolved issue now?
Potentially, yes.
Because they were murdered. So that's like, what, unfinished business?
Yes.
Okay. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes, I am.
Very interesting, ain't it?
Yes, it is actually. It makes you think, okay, you have all these things going on in life, and then you have all of this imprinting of energy everywhere. Where does it go? How long does it stay in the vicinity? Does it get picked up by other individuals? Does it influence other individuals? Does it influence animals? All of these things that are there that make you say, maybe there's more going on than what you clearly, visibly see.
Well, of course there is. And to answer your question, it stays around for a very long time. And what happens is it actually, that cloud, let's just call it a cloud, that hangs there that you can't see with the human eye. You can sense it, but you can't see it. So each one of these people that they tested in that spot where those people were murdered, they walked away from the table, and one of them even had attitude, like was getting angry for no reason. And so they're like, here, have a bottle of water, just go sit over there and calm down, and we'll talk to you in like 30 minutes. And 30 minutes later, he got away from that area, and he was all hunky-dory and happy. Hey, man, I'm glad I can come by and help you guys out. I hope everything, blah, blah, blah. Kind of weird. But I think the imprinting, the energy as a cloud, starts out very small, or it could start out medium or large, depending on how much energy that person's putting out in that spot. And I think what happens is when another person walks into that spot and feels that energy and puts off the same energy, then that cloud just grows bigger. And it just gets bigger. And it just gets bigger. Now, of course, when it gets bigger, guess what happens?
What happens?
I believe, my opinion, is that the bigger it gets, the faster it impacts somebody. So, it's like, I don't know, it's going to be a stupid analogy, but you walk outside and it's lightly raining, it's sprinkling, right?
Yes.
What's going to happen? You're just going to get a little bit wet.
Correct.
What if it's pouring down rain?
You're going to get a lot of wet.
You're going to get soaked. So imagine that being a cloud of energy from small to large, right? So the thing about energies, another thing that I want to talk about on energy is, have you ever heard of energy vampires?
Yes, I have.
Oh, look at that.
Yes, I have.
Now, what's your term of an energy vampire?
An energy vampire, and my term, and let's get away from anything that has to do with Dracula or Van Helsing or anything you see on TV, is an individual that can walk by you, look at you, touch you, and everybody think of how you are when you wake up. Well, that's a bad example. You'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. Think of how you are during the daytime when you're wide awake, full of energy, good to go. You're all set. Now, think about if you do something very extraneous and then you get really tired and you feel that pull of energy inside you where you just feel drained all of a sudden. It like hits you and you're like, whoa. Well, imagine being full of energy and walking by somebody, say at the mall, is exactly that. Sometimes you can walk by somebody and none the wiser, everything's fine. And you walk by them, and as soon as you're equal to them, parallel, right at that moment, you feel your body get completely drained and tired, like you just got done running a 10-mile marathon. And,
right.
And it just hits you, and you're like, whoa, what is this? And then as soon as you pass them, everything's back to normal, and you don't feel anything. You're not tired. And if you're talking to somebody, you're on the phone, you're looking at stuff, you might not really realize it. But if you do realize it, then it's like, what just happened?
Right. And to add to what you're saying, well-known symptoms of being a victim of an energy vampire, and you pretty much hit it: irritability, fatigue, lack of motivation, insomnia, sensitivity to the cold is what my research a long time ago has led me to understand. So you hit the fatigue part. So that now do you think when you're coming across an energy vampire, do you think it's actually a touch thing, or is it just being next to them?
I think it's everything. I think it doesn't have to necessarily, you don't have to make physical contact. I think it could be just by being in the vicinity or proximity of somebody. I think it could be by physically touching somebody. And when I mean by physically touching somebody, think of it as some simple example as you get down at the grocery store, you buy, a few things, and you put it in the plastic bag. And the person goes, here's your groceries, have a good day. And you're like, cool. And you go to grab the grocery bag. And both your hands kind of, fist bump, touch for a second. And it could be that small of an interaction, just barely making contact with that person's, finger as your finger touches it and you walk off. That little interaction that's so minuscule, seems innocent. You don't even think twice about it because you're already going, okay, where did I park? And then from that point forward, it could change everything for you for the next few hours.
Do you know that there's 5 types of? There's actually 4. A person I know, they kind of threw a 5th one in there, but have you ever heard of this? What is it? The Celestine
Prophecy.
Prophecy, yes. So the 4, they only list 4 types of vampires. You know what those are?
Go ahead and enlighten me. Tell me, Mr. Dalton.
So you have an intimidator, what they call the intimidator vampire. Obviously, you can figure that out. They drain your energy by threat or fear. Okay? The second one is an interrogator. They constantly judge other people. Now, we talk about physical touch, but these are like energies that they're giving off that are actually stealing energy. Does that sound right?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so then you have the third one, which is called an aloof. Now, they're hard to get, and they kind of act coy. Now, the fourth one, which always irritates the crap out of me in this one, is the poor me factor. They make others feel guilty for, say, them feeling down or whatever. You get what I'm saying? I hate that one. So these 4 things, these 4 types are energy vampires. The 5th one that somebody I know put in there was storytellers. Have you ever heard of that?
A storyteller?
Storyteller. He lists them as storytellers.
Okay.
So these are people that will have the opportunity to get into social gatherings and tell you something you might even know or heard of, but they're going to make you listen anyway. And they do full eye contact. So you might sit there and go, hey, I already know this pretty much, but are you going to be rude about it, or is your natural instinct to stand there and go ahead and listen to it again? I would say you're going to stand there and listen to it again, not to be rude, right? I mean, unless you're just a rude person, then you're going to be like, yo, dude, I've heard this already. I don't need to hear it again, and walk away. People do that. But storytellers, from what I understand, that's going to be your 5th one, even though Celestine didn't even list that one. Mm-hmm. But for them to get into conversation with you and make eye contact and actually start telling you things that you already know, because they know you're just going to stand there and listen while they take your energy from you. Now, the other thing that's interesting about it is your natural gut reaction on fighting them. Now, for me, I can shake somebody's hand in 5 minutes and know whether I want to talk to you anymore or not. I'm just going to walk away. So if your gut tells you that this person can't be trusted, or if your gut says that their energy that they're forming or giving off to you doesn't feel right and you don't want to talk to them, then just walk away from them. Get away from it before they suck the energy out of you. Because you know what can happen when they do that?
What's that?
They can turn you into a energy vampire. Did you know that?
Really?
By taking your energy like that. And what they do is they take it to where basically they take it out from you to where now you got to go steal it from somebody. I reckon that's how that would be explained.
That's not good at all.
No. And there's people out there that don't even know that they're an energy vampire. That's kind of scary. So if you run across somebody that doesn't know that they're doing it, then what's your thoughts on that?
That's kind of a gray area for me, because you can't fault a person if they're unaware of something that they have been susceptible to and that they're inadvertently doing. I mean, you have what I believe, you have the conscious mind of things you make a decision on. Then you have the spiritual side, which kind of has its own game plan or has things about it that does what it wants. I think they are completely separate from one another, but for some individuals that are very in tune, maybe educated or awoken or aware, maybe both of those kind of mix between one another, and they're of a more unified mindset, I guess it's safe to say.
Right. So you have like your physical vampires, and then you have your non-physical vampires. So that's pretty much what we outlined, I would think.
Yep.
You have it where, so your physical vampires is an emotional or mental dysfunction that it is draining them. And most times energy is feeding, and it's not intentional. So it is not a conscious decision to take your energy, and it's not deliberate, but it's an energetic part of them that attaches to you and sets it up. Does that make sense?
Doesn't sound like hooking up a cable box, but yeah. Going off of the description so far and the way you're lining everything up, yes.
Okay, so the non-physical, that was a physical vampire. So the non-physical vampires are entities in the unseen, non-physical realms around us. They have every intention of stealing and using your energy. That is mainly how they survive.
That I could believe.
Okay. Now, when we go into investigations and we're not getting a whole lot of evidence at the time, but we can sense that they want to talk. What's the first stupid thing that I do? Oh, well, take my energy and use it. So,
there you go.
There you go. So that's what I do, because I'm like, hey, I want you to talk to me. So if you need to take my energy, here you go. So it's like inviting the vampire in your house.
Right.
They can't cross the threshold unless you invite them. So we do that. Is it a safe thing to do? Probably not. But a lot of times that's why I walk away from investigations tired, wore out, fatigued. Now, here's the question about me personally. Now, because I let them take my energy and do what they did, does that mean I become a vampire and I start sucking out everybody else's energy in the group?
No. I think your inner disposition and certain attributes and things about you also aid you and can also act in your defense.
Right, because you also know that after the entities and the spirits basically leave me, they get done attaching themselves to me, and they leave, then I'm wide awake and I'm fine. I got 100% energy back. So, yeah, I would agree that I just had to throw that question out there because we're talking about how one vampire can take the energy from a person, and then that person can turn around and become a vampire themselves by having to take the energy from somebody else. So it's good to know that I'm not really a vampire. It's good to know that when they take my energy and they leave, I'm fully energetic again. So being fully energetic, then would you say that I regained my root? Would that fall into my chakra?
You know, as far as it goes with chakras, that's a whole different conversation, which we're going to jump into right now. But as far as you're gaining your energy back, as you're talking about, we kind of touched base earlier on chakras. You have your crown chakra, your third eye, your throat, your heart, your solar plex, your sacral, and your root. They're all associated to different locations on your body, literally going from your feet all the way up to the top of your head.
So list them out.
Your crown. It's located at the top of the head. Okay?
And what is the crown?
The crown, it represents states of higher consciousness and divine consciousness.
Spirituality.
Or connection.
So like spirituality?
Yes.
Okay, so then when I lost my energy and I got it back, then that would be my crown chakra?
It could be, potentially. It depends, because the way the chakras work is they're all associated with things spiritually, but also physically to your body. And you may hear the phrase, oh, everything's aligned within me, or my chakras are free flowing. That means energy's hypothetically going from the very top all the way down through all your chakras to the ground. And for your question that you posed, does that mean you have all your energy back? Well, if you want to look at it this way, all the chakras have energy that exude outward and do different things spiritually for you, for your etherical body or being. And you touched base just a moment ago for the last 44 minutes of on, okay, well, my energy was weak. Maybe it was taken away, energy vampires and all that. Well, how does that really affect you energy-wise? Well, if you want to get into the chakra aspect, these chakras are energy power plants also. So if you close one of them off, it may affect you. Say you go on over and you want to go and just say hypothetically your solar plex chakra, which is right there, is messed up, or as they say, blocked. Next thing you know, you start having issues with control issues, or maybe your self-esteem. Those two things I just stated are supposedly, as I will say, associated with that chakra.
Now, have you ever heard of Sanskrit?
Yes.
And do you know what chakra in Sanskrit means?
What's that?
Wheel.
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 Okay.
So you have 7 energies. That's what you named out, right? 7? I believe it was.
Yes. 7 chakras.
Okay. So the wheel consists of, they name it wheel because they think that these are like spinning wheels of energy in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And those energies play off certain things like we were talking about. So when you do, let's say you're dealing with your heart chakra. You said the heart, right? There's one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the 4th chakra.
Okay, so the heart chakra, what do you think that would entail? What would that be? Love and healing?
It represents love, self-love, relationships. Let me pull back to my brain there. Also, self-discipline or lack of, maybe even depression or relationships in general. You know, you may hear people say, I have a broken heart. I know it's a cliche, but if somebody's heart chakra is blocked, quote unquote, then for all intents and purposes, on a metaphysical level, that person may not be able to exhibit or experience any of those attributes I just said.
Because it's blocked.
Because it's blocked. Now, if they got looked at scientifically or medically, and they are 100% top bill of health, they're going to say, okay, it's in your head. You know?
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you subscribe to the metaphysical aspect of life, this stuff is very real. It can be influenced. It can be blocked. It can be damaged. They, meaning the chakras, can be rebalanced as it's talked about, realigned, even empowered or charged via different things, crystals and so forth, or even other people.
Now, you mentioned at the Moon River Brewery in one podcast, I believe it was the second one, I believe. And you had mentioned the shiny stone you carried.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, didn't you mention that was kind of a chakra, using the stone?
Well, that particular stone had attributes about it that resonated and gave off a protective energy. So you are indeed correct. My chakras would have picked up on that energy, and it would have basically, for a better lack of words, amplified certain levels or frequencies of energy, if you want to get scientific there.
Right.
And it's supposed to be a benefit or boon to myself, my etherical side of myself. And anybody that listened to the previous podcast on that, I was grabbed in my leg by an invisible hand, and the rock got pushed into my leg.
The rock was supposed to do what?
It was supposed to
not have that happen.
It was supposed to act as a ward / item that would boost certain capabilities to assist me at that point in time.
Well, and it's kind of good. It's kind of good that we just jumped to that, because you got you have the 7 discs or wheels of chakra, which are in your body, right? Those are the energy platforms in your body.
Yep.
So yeah, we just jumped back to energy. So I said, this is going to tie in together.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have chakra stones. So now you have 7. I believe it's 7. So you have 7 discs or wheels of energy chakras. Now you have 7 stones. Now, I think there's a few more than 7. I think that if you go into the color coordination of each energy chakra on the energy side, you might have 2 or 3 colored stones within that one energy. You see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Okay, but your baseline, let's go to baseline. Your baseline chakra stones, which you had one of them, is going to be 7. So the 7 stones, do you know what those are?
Go ahead and share the wealth of knowledge there, Mr. Dalton. Let's hear what you got.
Okay, so the 7 stones, you have rose quartz is one. Okay. You have, if I'm pronouncing it right, sodalite stone. You have the black tourmaline. Is that how you pronounce that? Tourmaline? Okay. You have the lapis lazuli or whatever stone. I'm from the South.
I'm just going to let you just keep going with your pronunciation. Look, if you have to smack your hands together and break it up into the portions of the syllables.
I'm using fingers right now.
He's looking at me, throwing his hands up, going, I'm not sure. I'm just going to keep going with it.
This one, amethyst. Easy.
Yep. There you go. Yep.
And then cornalina, I said, I think. But anyway, you got 7 stones. Now, these stones, how do you think, do they feed off? So if I had a black tourmaline stone, obviously that stone keeps you what? Grounded. So if I had a black tourmaline stone, would that play off of my root chakra? The energy?
It could.
So do the stones amplify the energy, or does the energy amplify the stones?
I would say it goes both ways, because as I spoke in a previous podcast, crystals and stones, even though they're a solid, they represent energy in a form. They vibrate frequency-wise on certain levels, and our energy or chakra points will pick up on that, and they will play or act off one another. So I think it's interchangeable.
You think it's interchangeable?
That is correct. That is my final answer. I do not need a lifeline or a hint on this question.
Okay. So they're different shapes, and of course they're different colors. And it's interesting to say that they would play off each other. Normally, one would be a conductor of another. When you deal with something like that, would you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have both of them playing off each other, is that your two negatives make a right thing?
That analogy actually was from math back in the day.
I know it is. That's why I throw it in there. But anyway, so yeah, the chakra, it's chakra's pretty interesting. Did chakra, did they come around to that? Is that the one that they used in a yoga platform?
It can be utilized in a yoga platform for spirituality and mind and body wellness as it goes, because all of it is about finding your inner peace, your inner balance.
Your chi?
Your chi, depending on...
Wow, do you see how we just went energy, chakra, spirituality, chi?
And the whole time, Dalton's over here throwing his hands around like he's some sort of kung fu master.
Yeah, we're talking about chi.
Well, actually, you do what? Krav Maga, Rangoon?
Krav Maga.
Krav Maga, there you go.
Krav
Maga.
Krav Maga. It's Israeli.
Okay,
so anyway, that's enough about that. So did you know that the Indians thought the centers of spiritual power in the body considered to be 7 in the number? So
really,
do you think that, of course, let's not even think about it. The Indians thought of a number 7, right? So that would be the 7 chakras. Would you say that?
Potentially. I mean, every society has their own versions of what they believe.
Because chakra's been around since like 2500 BC, from what I looked up a long time ago, and something I read. Can you believe it's been around that long?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
It's pretty funny because, not to go in the left field real quick, but short story, long time ago, History Channel, guy made these stones. And on these stones was engraved like somebody doing heart surgery or somebody looking in the telescope into space. You remember that story?
Yes.
And he was a grave robber. But he couldn't admit to robbing a grave because the penalty of grave robbing in that country was death. So they had scientists that actually studied the stones and found out that they were in BC time. Okay? But the guy couldn't admit to stealing them from a grave. Now, what happened in those times? They used to bury all the important possessions with people, right?
Yes, because those possessions were going to be with them in the afterlife.
You see how funny that falls into everything? So the thing is, if they were doing all that back then yes, I would agree that they knew about chakras back then. Especially, the Indians, okay, we're talking Indians, they pretty much figured out that the number was 7 in the spiritual power. Now, do you consider a chakra being a spiritual power?
Yes.
because it's the center of your spirituality, right?
It could be, depending on your belief system.
Belief system, exactly. What kind of belief system?
Well, I can use myself as an example. I'm spiritual, more so than utilizing theology, just due to my life events and things I've experienced. I was no longer able to say, hey, this is what I follow or believe. So I think it's on people's personal life decisions and what they want to believe in going forward to form their opinion.
So, like their accounts?
Their personal accounts and experiences, yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And so then, you have the third eye. What's your thought process on the mind's eye or inner eye, the third eye?
Well, I believe the mind's eye, it's always going to vary depending upon who you talk to. But the individual mind's eye is the connection point to a higher frequency or level of consciousness or spiritual plane. It just all depends on the way you want to coin it. And it's where people are tapped into a higher level of communication, as it's called, for receiving information or putting information out.
Okay. Do you think like the third eye, is that something we use during investigations? Is that our intuitions?
Yes. For me, it is.
So that's how so when you say that you basically open your mind, you're actually opening the third eye?
I would say that's safe to say. It depends on how it works for people. Not everybody utilizes their third eye. Sometimes they have an aptitude to be gifted in different parts of their body. Some people may utilize a third eye. Some people may utilize a gut instinct. Some people may utilize a feeling in their stomach. Some people may feel something that is deeper than all of those that are within themselves. From the many, many, many people that I have been privileged to get to know and talk to over the years and solicit information on their methodologies.
And when you get into the third eye, of course, you're talking spirituality, but you're also talking about clairvoyance.
That could be one modality, yes.
Because doesn't the third eye often symbolize a state of enlightenment?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So in Hinduism and Buddhism, the third eye is said to be located around the middle of the forehead, slightly above the junction of the eyebrows. And the enlightenment is achieved through meditation. Have you heard that?
Yes, I have.
So the Hindus also place a tilaka between the eyebrows as a representation of the third eye. So you would think that, are these Hindus, are they like Buddhists?
They could be.
So that's what the thing is on their forehead, right? That'll be the representation of the third eye that you always see.
Yes.
When you ever meet them, like even India? When you go, have you ever seen I've seen a few people from India, they've had this trinket in the middle of their forehead.
Okay.
So that's what they're representing as the third eye?
So the third eye, I'll be honest, I really don't know. I've seen individuals in documentaries and movies and TV and in person, but
right.
I've never ever had a opportunity to insert myself in a conversation to actually garner more information or find out.
Okay.
I just thought it was something that was always personal, and I just left it at that.
For the longest time, I didn't know the answer to that either, and I finally just asked one of them, what is this ordeal you got up here? And one of them told me it's the representation of the third eye. And because, the person that told me that, they were actually on an investigation with me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I believe they were from India.
Okay.
And the weird thing is that me and this person who obviously used the third eye very well, our energies were strong. They were ridiculously strong. We could almost, it was almost alien, bro. Like we were telepathic to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's how quick we were responding to each other, almost answering each other before we even spoke. It was weird. But I just wanted to share that with you because the trinket up there that they do is pretty much representing that third eye.
Okay.
Now, when you talk about the one thing that we left out on the energy level was the dark energy. And real quick, I was like, the dark energy takes up 69.4% of the universe.
That is a very exact thing to say.
Okay, 70%.
Rounds up, plus or minus.
70%. Have you ever did any research on some dark energy? Black energy, dark energy?
No, because it's a very dark subject.
No pun intended.
No, I tried doing research, but everything I looked for just wasn't there. It didn't exist. No, I just said that because dark energy is hard to prove. No, I haven't done any research on dark energy.
So, being physically attacked by the dark energy, have you known anybody that's been... Now, again, when I mention dark energy, I'm not talking demonic. I'm talking dark energy. So, entities and spirits and dark energies will attach themselves to us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? To indicate a dark energy attack. If you're being physically attacked, you can feel it. Of course. Hence the physical, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, that is used, dark energy from an energy that is used by negative energies in the spiritual dimension to attack living or non-living things on Earth. Have you ever heard of that definition?
Yes.
Okay. So the negative energies are entities who have an intent to harm others, and black energy is their primary weapon of attack. So now we're talking two different types of dark energy, right?
Yes.
So you have one that they're using to harm the negative energy, which would be the black energy, I would presume. Then the black energy becomes a primary weapon. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Completely.
Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to get it. There's a whole thing of dark energy research because it deals with the universe. I believe even Albert Einstein, or not Einstein, was it Einstein? I'm trying to think of. There was a bunch of famous people back in the day that was talking about dark energy. Oh, one thing remember we had mentioned Thomas Edison, right?
Earlier, yes.
Yes. So when Thomas Edison passed away, all his clocks stopped at the same time. Have you heard that story?
No. Go ahead and get me up to speed. What's going on with that exactly?
Okay, so the whole thing was, I'm just going to narrow it down real quick. The whole thing was Thomas Edison passed away, and they say that all his clocks stopped at one time. He was using the dark energy force because it's made up of almost 3/4 of our universe.
Okay.
To prove to others that his soul or his afterlife can come back and basically communicate. You didn't know that?
Nope. You just taught me something there.
So I'm glad I could teach you something there. And there's a little bit more to that on the Thomas Edison deal because he dealt with seances, and he had a near life death experience. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah. So
No, I did not.
yeah, at 15 years old, I believe it was, he had a near life death experience, and that's what kind of brought him into the paranormal. But we're talking about dark energy and black energy. Have you ever heard of black orbs?
Yes.
And what do you think the meaning of that is?
They're very dark.
Yes, you've already said that about dark energy. What is a black orb to you? Do you know the honest definition of that?
Go ahead and enlighten everybody. What's a black orb?
A black orb, we're going to get here. We're going to go right back to the D word.
Really?
Yep.
I thought we were done with that for the day.
Well, the black orb, which they don't list, if you actually pull up a lot of the color charts in the orbs,
Okay.
the black one's hardly in there.
Now, you said orbs. What do you mean by orbs?
Orbs are balls of energy.
Okay.
So you have the dust. You know, we can debunk it. Photos, bugs, dust, things like that. But you do have orbs that emit an energy, and they give off a certain color. Or they have body, like they look full. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Okay. First of all, I want to tell everybody we're not an orb group. I do have photos of certain orbs because they're legit energy orbs, which usually specifies a spirit or a ghost. Okay? But we're definitely not an orb group. We're not the type of group that sees a dust cloud or something and goes, "Oh, look at the orbs." Okay, we're not that. That's not us. So,
How does that go again?
yes, I'm not doing it. So anyway, black orbs, when you look at the color chart for orbs and you try to figure out the different colors and stuff like that, black is one that I've never really seen on a color chart before. Have you ever seen one?
No.
Okay, so the reason being that I just figured out a while back, because I actually caught some black orbs in a photo.
You did now.
Yes.
What's up with these photos? Do share.
Well, we was at a Civil War battle site, actually. And it wasn't Perryville. It was another battle site that somebody let us on. Actually, it was not Civil War. It was the Second Seminole War down there by Brooksville. So down there by May Stringer, the Dade Battlefield. So the Dade Battlefield is down there by Brooksville, and that was the second Seminole Indian War. Okay? There was a fort there. And the there was another fort in Tampa, and they'd come up and created a fort there in Dade, the Dade Battlefield. Anyway, long story short, we were out there taking photos, and I picked up some black orbs, and I thought it was just like maybe a shadow or the background, you know, like you have the orb and it was something behind it making it look black, but these were black. So I did some research on that back then when I caught these black orbs, and it's a low vibration entity.
Wait, you just said the V word, vibration.
Vibration.
So low vibration entity.
Right. So
that just ties into what we were just talking about energy,
right,
which has to do with frequency, which has to do with chakras potentially and affecting people. I'm seeing what you're doing here. Okay.
Right. So that's why I mentioned the low vibration entity first. But also a black orb, they say the spirit orb is someone who performed evil acts, committed suicide, or it's a demon. Okay. So, performed evil acts. that would fall along the lines of me always saying that evil is just like an evil person that was just evil when they were alive, and they carried that tradition into their death. And they're just being evil in the afterlife. So, the energy orb, the energy side of the black orb would be depression, addiction. Here's the funny thing, weakness or illness, but also protection. Does that make it's a neutral energy? Now when you say that I actually tell you that in your physical mind, would that make sense to you?
Nope.
Exactly.
Not the slightest.
Exactly. So when you say low frequency, we'll get back to the frequency. When you say a low frequency person, what they're referring to.
Somebody once did say low energy person, but anyways, go ahead.
Yes, I can say low energy if you want. Low energy. I actually said low vibration though. Entity. A low vibration entity. That's a person who had a physically or mentally ill situation. Weakness and illness can lower the vibration. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
There you go. Okay, so now you know where I'm really going.
Because, as I stated earlier, the chakra points, the little energy points, are associated to different parts of the physical body. So when you're sick and ill, they affect different places on you.
Right.
So go ahead and continue.
Okay, so when you get to the weakness and the illness and it creates a lower vibration, okay, so that would make maybe you're talking maybe that person had the mental illness, might be an addiction, might be, or would you put that under physical?
It's hard to say.
So let's say they had a addiction with drugs. Would you stabilize that addiction to be physical or mental?
It could be physical for the dependency. It could be mental for the psyche.
I'd say both. I'd throw both of them at it.
Okay.
Okay, so that takes care of why a black orb would exist also. But here's the thing that I always question about a black orb.
Okay.
That it can indicate protection. A black orb may be protective energy that is absorbing the dark energy from people or things around to keep you safe. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Explain.
Well, energy is energy. The colors that we see in orbs are going to be denoted of the light spectrum, which is what we can and can't see with the human eye. A lot of times when you take photos, depending on the type of video camera that you use, depending on if they are mirrorless or not, for anybody who's unaware, it's literally a mirror that's inside the camera that is reflecting off the lens that's going out to wherever it's pointing at. Point being is cameras don't always pick up the full light spectrum. So to answer your question, bringing back full circle, Dalton, I believe orbs are multitudes of colors, depending on the environment that it's in, and also what the energy is being derived from.
Okay, so that being that Dade battlefield was a pretty horrific battle, you're saying that energy created a black orb?
I could say that energy that's there may be black, potentially.
Which is a bad thing, right?
But you just said it's not always a bad thing.
That's what I'm saying. So how can you combine the two in the same orb?
I would have to defer this question to my third eye chakra point for higher consultation.
Yeah, I don't know either. Just say that. That's the whole reason. That's the whole reason I'm sitting here going, How do you explain that? Just say, man, I don't know. It's just, the thing is, I don't know. But when I studied a black orb, is that maybe one of the, our opinion, is this all our opinions? Do you think, in our opinion, your opinion, my opinion, that's why the black orb ain't really on the list because it's a conflict of interest? That's a simple way to put it.
Maybe it's just one of those colors that can't be distinguishable because you can't give it a color that's a different color, so it's kind of like a clear orb. Well, what does a clear orb represent? Well, it's clear. Okay, so what does it mean? It's clear. So
what's a clear orb mean?
Well, to me, a clear orb is just strictly an orb. It's energy.
But there's actually a meaning behind it.
What's the meaning behind a clear orb, Dalton?
Now, you want to talk about a white orb or a clear orb?
A clear orb, a translucent orb, like a soap bubble almost, that you can see through. Or maybe it's a little bit...
okay, I get it, a clear orb.
Not so clear.
Okay. A clear orb, to me, doesn't really fit in the sequence. If you study the colors of the sequence of the colors of orbs. But you got to talk about them because frequently the orbs are frequently documented. Clear orbs are documented a lot. They're frequent. And from what I've been told from people that study orbs, again, we're not an orb group, so we don't rely on orbs to be our main sustenance. Okay? The thing that we do. We go investigate to actually get evidence. Now, an orb can be considered evidence, but not as though as a disembodied voice or a digital recorder or the tools that we use, if you can fathom what I'm trying to say there.
Yes.
Okay. So what I've been told is that clear orbs are very similar to white orbs. They are spirits that want to be seen and heard.
Okay.
Okay? So they're trying to communicate in some kind of way, and they want to be noticed. So they believe that these particular orbs of light are stuck and need some help with moving on.
All right.
If you believe this paranormal meaning that I'm telling you right now, I've been told to try to stop and help them, but that's not what we do. I don't do it. I don't think it's my position to help them move on. Do you? Would you do something?
The part of me, I guess you could say that's the humanity part of me that wants to do the right thing would say yes. But the other part of me that knows everything is not always 100% representative of exactly what's there is the cautious side of me. That's telling me take a step back, reevaluate, really try to get a feel for what's going on because not everything is exactly as it looks.
No, because that's kind of like dealing with a demonic possession. If you knew you was dealing with a demon, would you just run in there and try to take care of that situation, or would you get a hold of some professional to do that?
I would probably pick up the telephone and call a few individuals that live, eat, and breathe demonic possessions or exorcisms or anything along those lines to where that is their normal breakfast that they have, and it's just another day.
Right. So that's where I feel about helping people pass on. Okay? I don't feel like I'm the chosen one to make that decision. I'll call a priest or somebody that, I want to say they're part of the church, so that's part of their job. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really religious, but I don't think it's my duty. That's not what I was put here for, is what I'm saying. So I wouldn't do it. I would call a professional. So anyway, the white orbs. Now we got from the clear orbs, and they say that they're similar to a white orb. Do you know the definition of a white orb?
What's the definition of a white orb? Something tells me you might know a thing or two about a thing or two.
I know a little bit. So white orbs, basically in photos, if you come across these type of orbs, it usually means you are passing by a spirit of someone you once knew. So it's similar to a clear orb. You have the clear orb that wants to communicate, wants to be heard. When you pass by a white orb, or if you have a picture of a white orb, that's someone you once knew. So I can see kind of where they go hand in hand, but I still think they're kind of different now that I'm thinking about it. Because you have the clear orb that wants to communicate and be heard, and now you're talking about passing a white orb, which is somebody you used to know.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
So it could be a lost person or a pet. Have you ever come across any spirit pets? I have.
Spirit pit?
Pet.
Pet.
The cat, dog.
Oh, you're talking about an animal
Yes.
that's moved on, but that's still around.
Right.
Yes, I have.
So you know a white orb could be a past pet.
Yes.
A pet that passed away. So just so you know, when you're dealing with a white orb, it might not be a person. It might be an animal that passed away. So, orbs, to me, when you take photos, basically, they can fool you. You might think you're looking at an orb, and you're actually looking at a dust ball or a bug. You know, you might like, okay, now here's the thing. When we're shooting video, DVR, and you see a ball of light stream in front of the camera. Remember seeing those?
All the time.
All the time, right? When it goes in a straight line, what do? Ignore it.
Ignore it.
Right, because we can't tell what that is. Now, if you're watching the video camera and you have this white ball of light that comes slowly floating in to the camera, kind of makes a left turn, goes back to the right, kind of goes straight. It has meaning like it's going somewhere. It's not moving fast. It's moving at a medium rate of speed. Now, do you pay attention to that?
Yes.
Exactly. Because that's a ball of energy. You don't see... Now, if you're talking about one that's moving really slow, you can almost counteract that as being a bug flying around, right?
Yes.
Okay. But if you got one that's kind of moving at a steady pace and it's got meaning, and when you blow that orb up, it's got full body, you know what I'm talking about? It's not clear, it's not whatever, it's got body to it, like form. And it's changing direction, and say it stops in the midair and then keeps moving. I think I would pay attention to that. That would be basically a spirit to me. I'd have to say that's what it was. Would you agree to that?
Yes.
Okay.
I would.
So, being that you mentioned, what made you bring up the clear orb?
Because from a lot of investigations, I get a lot of clear orbs in photos. And they're interesting. They different shapes and sizes. Sometimes I'll get clear orbs with multiple colors in them, or a singular color besides it being clear. Sometimes they're completely see-through. Sometimes they're kind of fuzzy. And they seem to be the most prominent for the most part that I usually see.
They are, and like I said, those are actually pretty frequent. Do you know, have you ever seen a yellow orb?
Not an outright yellow orb like a banana yellow, but I have seen muddy, darker yellow. Yes.
I've captured a yellow orb one time going into an investigation. And I did the research on a yellow orb, and basically, what is yellow to you? The color yellow. When you see yellow, what does that mean to you?
Banana.
I don't know what it is with you and food, but anyway, to me, it's caution, right? So you have a red light, a green light, and a yellow light. And what's the yellow light mean? Caution.
Caution.
Okay. So doing the research on a yellow orb, it means caution. Slow down, high alert, basically is what they're saying the yellow orb entails.
Mm-hmm.
So you go on an investigation like I did. You take a couple photos outside of the building that you're fixing to go investigate, and a yellow orb pops up. What's your thought process after you learn what it means?
Right?
It's like, what?
What? Wait, you're looking at your orb chart, and if you have one going, well, this means this, and this means this, and now I got this one, it's just like.
That's crazy though, right? That you go to a place to investigate, and you take a photo, and a yellow orb shows up. That's a spirit trying to tell you, don't come in here, fool. Don't come in here. Caution, man, caution. Blink your eyes twice if you're in trouble. Kind of thing. I don't know. But that's crazy. That's the first yellow orb that I've ever got. We investigated the place anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
We investigated it anyway. And yes, there was some sketchy stuff going on in there. Real sketchy. And it was almost to the point that at that point, no, I don't carry an orb chart with me because, like I said, I'm not an orb person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should be. Just because if you're getting orbs that are showing up in your investigation and they're different colors, you can easily look down and see what the color is, and you know what kind of entity you're dealing with, I guess, right?
Correct.
Right. So if I had a color chart and I knew that yellow meant, hey, don't come here, I probably still would have investigated anyway, just because that's me. You know how I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to run in there anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. People are going to think there's a fire in a building, but then people are going to realize that there's no fire, but the way Dalton just goes on in, I'll be like, just take a step back, ma'am. Sir, we got to do some investigating.
That's right. I mean, that's what they wanted us to do, was get in there and find out what's going on. That's our job. And I mean, it's not a paying job, or no. You know what I'm saying though, right? It's our job.
Yes.
That's what we do. Why? How can you be a professional person if you don't do what you're supposed to do? So, yes, every sign, for instance, you getting sick going to an investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling good going to investigation. You might as well put a yellow orb in front of us because something's telling us, hey, don't come in there. We don't want you here, but we're going anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So have you ever seen a purple orb?
No, I have not.
I haven't either, but I had a friend who has, and I didn't believe him. Now, a purple orb is basically that you feel really great, that you should feel really great that you come across one. Why? Because it deals with angels. Now, the purple orb dealing with angels, it represents loyalty.
Okay.
Is what I've been told.
Okay.
So think about who was loyal to you in your past life and who would want to protect you today. Hence, what? Angel, guardian angel, right?
There you go. Guardian angel.
There you go. Purple orb. Interesting, huh? I've never seen one.
Yes.
Any other orbs that have you captured in your investigations? Any other colors?
In all sincerity, you really touch base on the majority of the colors between the darker yellow, the white, the black. I've never seen a purple. I've never seen a blue or a red. Pick a color on the color wheel. I have not seen the majority of those. Just the few that I just mentioned I have.
I've captured a silver orb before. Have you ever seen a silver?
Nope, not in the slightest.
And you know what the funny thing is about that? How can you tell it's silver between white and clear?
I have no idea.
Me neither. But I had a guy on investigation one time. He goes, "Oh my God, you got a silver orb." And I said, "I got a what?" He said, "You took a picture of a silver orb." And I said, "What's a silver orb?" So the guy looks at me and he says, "It's a message from an orb angel."
There you go.
I said, "What the heck is an orb angel?" And I don't really remember how he explained it, but basically there is a spirit that is having a hard time crossing over. Here we go again. That you might have some work to do here, basically, is what he said. And I said, "No, I don't do that. There's no work for me." He said, "Well, if you took the picture and a silver orb showed up in your photo, they want you to help them cross over." And I said, "Here we go again. I don't do that." No, I don't do that. Silver orbs are cool. Red orb now, if you ever get a picture of a red orb, again, this is the thing with the black orb. Okay?
Okay.
So the red orb can mean one of two things. A red orb can be associated with an angry energy force. That's self-explanatory. Red, stop, danger, danger. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Some believe that red can always mean protection. Here we go with the protection again. On a red orb. So you had it on a black orb. Now you got it on a red orb. So it signifies that someone is trying to surround and protect you like a guardian. That's the second part of a red orb.
Okay.
Okay. Why does things have to be like that? Can't you just say red is danger, stay away, yellow is caution, be cautious, black, leave black, black.
Yeah.
Okay? But you got to give two definitions to a red orb?
That's interesting.
Now I know why I'm not an orb guy. I'll be honest with you. I'm not an orb guy. So it recognizes how you feel around orb angels when you come across one. Again, we got to do some research on an orb angel. Have you ever heard of an orb angel?
No, I have not.
I haven't either. So your red orb meaning can be different than someone else besides you. It's all about emotion.
Emotion.
So we talking energy vibration?
There you go again.
See?
I'm going to call you Mr. Tie-In Dalton because you're tying everything in together. I'm
just going off of what I've been told or what little research I've done over the past years. It's just, it's crazy when you talk about these things. So like somebody told me yesterday, "Oh, y'all going to do a podcast on energy, chakras, and orbs." He goes, "That's 3 subjects." I said, "Yes and no." Because if you're going to listen to this podcast, hopefully, we have put it out there in a way that you can see it all falls through with one another. The energy, the chakra, the orbs, the dark orbs, and the universe itself, right?
Right.
That it all kind of just lines up together. One plays off the other. Would you agree to that?
Wholeheartedly, without a doubt, yes.
Cool. So I'm going to throw one out here. There's one I don't know about. Let's find out real quick. So we went through the clear orb, that orb, a blue orb. You mentioned the blue orb. And now I am doing a little research. So the blue orb. Oh, wow. Again, orb angels. We got to do some research on an orb angel, man.
Yep. We'll touch base on that on another podcast. Most definitely.
Again, this is a orb angel, calm and peaceful presence who wants nothing more than to protect and guide you. That would be a blue orb. It also wants to better your mood. All great things. And interesting there. What's interesting is I'm learning about a orb angel. They have what they call a golden orb. You ever seen a gold orb?
No, I have not.
I have. And there's pictures of those gold orbs on the Facebook Theory Paranormal page.
Okay.
There's a friend of mine. She's on the haunted. What's that haunted paddle boat? The famous, is it the Mississippi something or the Queen something? The famous one paddle boat that's haunted. It's the Queen something anyway.
The Queen Mary?
It might be that, but there's a haunted, anyway, it's a haunted paddle boat, and she and her boyfriend are standing there, and she sent me these photos. And those look like, all right, so I'm looking at a gold orb right now, and that's what those look like, gold orbs, right?
Yes.
So a gold orb is bright and filled with opportunity. Think about the paranormal meaning behind the orb killer. A shiny white outline could mean rewards for you in the future. Good things are coming your way.
Sounds like a fortune cookie.
Does sound like a fortune cookie. Here's the funny thing about that.
I keep talking about food. I'm getting kind of hungry.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing about that. The funny thing about that was when she came back off that trip, she had her own hair salon.
Wow. I want to go on that trip.
I do too.
I need a haircut.
No, I'm talking about get back to the ground yourself. Okay, so this golden orb is good things are coming your way. The shiny white outline could mean rewards in your future. Well, let me tell you what, she's living her best life right now. And her hair salon has really picked up business-wise.
Okay.
And she's just happy, man. So it's kind of funny that I wanted to go read about this golden orb, and that she has gold orbs in her photo, and nothing but good things have come her way, basically, from what I've seen. So I would say there's probably some truth behind that. So that's a pretty interesting thing right there that pops up. So anyway, the dark energy, I'd love to get on a Thomas Edison sort of subject one night too as well. People, I recommend that you go try and find it. It's hard. You got to dig deep to find ties with Thomas Edison and the paranormal, but it's out there. And also Albert Einstein and a few other people that we'll talk about one night. But what do we got coming up for the next podcast? You said you want to do like a 50-state thing?
Yeah, I was throwing around the idea of, I don't know if we're going to have time for all 50 states, but maybe talking about some of the most notable paranormal experiences that have happened in the states around the United States of America. You can watch many paranormal TV shows or listen to podcasts or read books, and everybody's always going to have their go-to favorite place. Well, the way I look at it is what about those places that aren't on the map so much, but still have as equally amount of activity or fanfare or urban legends or lore about them? So I'm going to...
So you just want to do like a fun free-for-all, kind of pick a state and see what the most haunted thing is there in the state?
Yep, that's pretty much it. I'm going to spend some time, do a little research, and give the listeners something to think about, because here at Theory Paranormal, we don't entertain just one state or one country. We are actually international for our podcast on multiple services, and we like to be able to cater to and reach out and help as many people as possible. And eventually we'll also touch base on different countries also for paranormal locations.
Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. I've always wanted to I mean, we're going to touch base on it, but I would like one day to be able to go to the Scotland or Ireland or something and do some of those big castles over there that are haunted. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. So just to touch base on the orb conversation real quick, at the end of the day, orbs or energy, I think they can be entities. I think they can be spirits. I believe they can be things that can't be categorized as either one of those. I believe they come from multiple places, the astral planes. I believe they come from other dimensions. I believe they come from here on the wonderful old earth. I believe they come from people of their own essence of energy. And I believe wholeheartedly, no matter what type of orb it is, that energy will affect everything around itself, good or bad. So, with that, we are going to wrap up episode 5 of Theory Paranormal's episode on energy, chakras, and orbs. If you have any questions, concerns, or anything that you want to let us know, please email us at info@theoryparanormal.com. And that is all we have today.
I'm going to leave you with one thing, because this has been bothering me. An orb angel. Okay? Angel orbs are electromagnetic energy fields that contain angelic energy. That's a whole nother topic there. I got to read up on that.
We're going to have to put that in the box for right now, unpackage it, and revisit it.
Yeah, but I wanted to leave everybody with that one thing because it was bothering me. What the heck is an angel orb? Orb angel.
I guarantee you there's somebody listening to this podcast right now having their hand raised like they want to answer that question for the teacher at the front of the class.
I tell you what, I invite somebody, if somebody knows about an orb angel, like they're a person that deals with orbs, likes to take photos and catch orbs, and they know about an orb angel, man, by all means, please email us and tell us a little bit about it. I'm interested now because we talked about possession and demonic. Now we're getting into orbs, and we find out there's an orb that has an angelic energy to it. Angelic, that's heaven energy. That's angels, right? I mean, angelic. That's the meaning, right?
As the phrase goes,
right. So that's got my interest sparked. So if anybody knows about orb angels, please feel free to email us and tell us a little bit about it. I'm going to do some research on it. But again, hope everybody enjoys what we talk about. I was actually somewhat reading through a bunch of stuff, so my hesitation between talking was a little bit, but apologize for that. But I was trying to get out the right way to explain so that everything flowed together. I hope it did. Anyway, thanks for listening, Pax. Another great one, I think.
Always. When you can listen to your own podcast and be its biggest fan, you got a winner.
Yeah, there might be some truth behind that.
That's like putting a comment on a social media and then liking it yourself.
I hate people do that on Facebook. They actually like their own post. I'm like, what are you doing?
It is what it is. So, as always, don't be afraid to ask questions.